group got started?
Well, asking an old guy, even though he's next to the oldest guy here, you know, a lot of it's been in the past, and the three of us, at least two of us. I don't know whether it was Judy or Marie that I ran into at the records office in Balsam Lake. But, we got to talking about genealogy, and we struggled along as a club for a couple of years, and we really weren't going any place. I remember one time meeting in Balsam Lake. I think I was in Unity School, and a usual meeting, but Helen Stoltz was there at the meeting, and she volunteered to put out a newsletter for us. And I knew from experience in Alaska and belonging to some of the winter rescue groups and being with the Lake Association down here, that an important part of any successful organization is a newsletter. And so when Helen volunteered to do the newsletter, then I figured, boy, this is going to make or break the club. And it certainly has had a very positive effect on the club. And certainly anybody can start a club, but it takes real talented people to make it grow and make it successful. So that was a big step in the club's progress. And then a few years later, we were still going around. We tried just about everything, meeting in various towns, and we had some pretty good luck that way too. But we were still kind of struggling, and then Russ Hansen joined us about the time when, it was a little before we had a little dust up with the county historical people.
It wasn't my fault.
Well, he kind of arranged it. We were trying to find a home upstairs in the museum in Balsam Lake, and that had a lot of limitations, particularly when they were only open in the summertime, and when one of the things, I think, making a Xerox copy when the copy itself probably only cost a nickel or a dime to make, we were forced to charge about $2 a copy, so for various reasons we just didn't have a very successful tour there, and Russ managed to, with his connection with the museum here, we were invited to come here, and as I mentioned before, that was a big morale booster for us to have a home, and also not only a place where we could meet and be comfortable and welcome here, but where we could also serve people year-round. And when I say we serve people, it'd be nice to think that it was a club acting collectively to serve the people, but it was really Russ and Margot too, that very faithfully came here every Monday to really serve the people, and so that was a big outreach thing for us. So it's good to see the club grow, but I think Helen and Russ are really the ones that are making it as successful as they are. Anybody have any questions about how they're doing?
So Jay, tell us how you decided to get started on doing genealogy, and when did you start?
Oh, boy. I imagine when my father's people came from Sweden and settled in the town of Apple River in 1870s, 1880s, and they pretty much lost track of the Swedes in Sweden about the time of World War I. And but then in about 1954 or something like that, one of my Swedish cousins that was with the Swedish Foreign Service was stationed in the United States for a while, and he and his wife made a trip to the Midwest just to go to the area that they had last heard of relatives. And so the last contact were relatives from Scandia, Minnesota, that had written to them, so they drove to Scandia, Minnesota, and they thought they were going to ask for directions, and so they stopped at some workers on the roadside, working on the road, and they were going to play a trick on these workers along the roadside, so they asked them a question in Swedish. And much to their surprise, the workers answered them in Swedish. And so they asked about a certain cousin, and he was kind of locally famous as a musician and carpenter, and they directed him to this cousin's place. And then we had been in close contact with the Scandia cousins. So that's why they found us, and then later on, this Foreign Service brother, and I was in Alaska at the time, so I didn't meet them when they were here. And but his brother later was teaching at the University of Chicago Medical School. He and some other radiologists in Sweden had developed techniques of going to the heart with using the femoral artery to push a tube up to the heart to do things with the heart, and that was a kind of an advanced thing at the time. And I was going to graduate school at Southern Illinois University, and so I took the train up to Chicago and met this cousin that was really interested in genealogy. So he got me started, and we started communicating, and in 1966, Joyce and I went to Europe, spent I think about a month in Sweden and 2 months in some other countries, and so the month in Sweden was spent visiting relatives, and my mother's, and so we met just about all the Swedish relatives there, and then later on in the trip, one of the things we wanted to do on that trip was look at some of the World War II battle grounds, and one was the siege of Leningrad in Russia. That siege lasted 3 months, where the Germans were fighting the Russians, and so that was, we traveled there and got the grand tour from the Russian point of view of this siege. And 2 months later, our grand tour of Europe took us to Germany, where our cousin, my first cousin in Switzerland, said you have some German relatives, and so we went up to visit them, and they were both, the men were both officers in the German army in World War II, and one of them was a a general that served on the Russian front at the siege of Leningrad. So he gave me the full story of the German point of view of this battle that we had reviewed a month or so earlier. Well, to make a long story longer, we heard a lot about historical aspects of the family from both my mother's side and my father's side, and got me interested in that, and it just kind of grew from then. I belonged to the Genealogy Society in Anchorage, and got to find out about the Mormons and what they were doing, and it just the further you look in the family, the more interesting it gets. And, yeah, that's about it. Yeah. So we, I think with the computers and the web and stuff like that, it's always going to be new and interesting genealogy. I look forward to continuing with it, maybe even more so once we get settled out in Reno. While speaking, I hope you all know about our farewell party at our house next Saturday afternoon from 3 to 6. So I hope you make it to that.
Bring your work clothes.
Farewell, where are you going?
Reno, Nevada.
Permanently?
Quite a place. Whatever. For an 85-year-old guy, I guess maybe it would be permanently.
Well, yeah, Wisconsin, you renew your license. There was a guy in our church was 92 saying, he was pretty good then, he renewed his license for 8 years. I looked at him and said, I think you might have a lifetime license.
Yeah, it's, well, I go to Reno from this beautiful spot of the world.
Yeah, what got you?
Well, our daughter, Christina, lives in Truckee, California, which is just up the mountain from Reno. Reno's kind of right at the border with California, and that's right at the edge of the Sierra Nevadas. And where she lives, it's another world altogether. It's mostly millionaires from San Francisco that have modest little $2 million homes up on Lake Tahoe, and it's almost a different monetary system up there altogether. But down in Reno, which is a couple of thousand feet lower, which is more comfortable for us used to 1,000 feet elevation, the prices are reasonable, and we can live pretty well on our incomes there. And we've got a 2-bedroom apartment lined up in a big senior development there. It's pretty competitive out there for recruiting old-timers to come and settle there. So we looked at 3 places, and our daughter out there was researching them, and we think we've come up with a nice place. Yeah.
And how do you get a house with 3 bedrooms down to 2-bedroom apartment?
Yeah, that's downsizing.
It is.
Especially when the 2 of us have been hooked on Costco. And then we have a 9-year-old granddaughter out there at Truckee too, that's on the Squaw Valley Alpine ski racing team, and she's doing moderately well there, so we're eager to see her do her thing.
Truckee, isn't that pretty famous for the Donner Party that
Yes, the Donner Party has
served their fellow man or something like that,
Yeah.
ate their fellow man?
Yeah, that's a big tourist attraction, is going to the places where various groups of the Donner Party spent that terrible winter. Yeah, and driving the road You look down at the canyons and how steep the mountainsides are, and you wonder, how could they possibly have wagons up and over these hills? It's just a terrible. And then 163rd Avenue is about the only crossroad in that general area, but 3¼ miles north of Highway 8, then you turn right, and we're in ¼ mile.
And if you have a GPS, it's an old one. It says you come to,
Yeah.
What we got doing Saturday?
is a third place.
We're free to go.
Yeah.
Some of the GPS directions are wrong. It takes you down to the lake. Last fall when Joyce had her vertebrae displaced, and the ambulance was called for, they just drove right on past the house, even though our son was out on the road. But they were more interested in following the GPS, which took them to the wrong place, so that added another 15 minutes on their arrival.
And if you come off of Highway 8 and go, and if you go to that Pap store, you went too far.
That's right, yeah.
Seems to me we've been there once.
We have.
Yeah, you've been there.
Yeah, I think you had a Christmas party or something at your place. Yeah, you had the genealogy folks out for Christmas or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Five years ago, we had our 50th wedding
Oh.
anniversary party, and some of you were probably
We were there.
yes. And
We were there for the Christmas parties too.
yes, I don't know whether it was at the Christmas party or the anniversary party, but you folks were not only there, but you were very generous in your gift too. I'll never forget. So thank you. Thank you all.
So while we're at it, Jay mentioned Helen and the newsletter. So do you want to give us a little story about how the newsletter came about and how long you think you've been doing it,
Well, I thought.
and when you joined the group?
But maybe it wasn't, maybe it was that Tuesday, I didn't remember that. And I just said, I do a newsletter, and that was 20 years ago, and I've done one every month since. It started out, though, that I actually cut and paste. And it took me a long time to know that you could cut and paste on a computer, and it wasn't exactly the same as cutting like this and pasting like that. But sometimes they're 8 pages long or 10 pages long, and sometimes they're 3, depending upon the news. And I was talking to Kathy Dice. Do you remember Kathy Dice? She was the lady that came up from the St. Croix Valley group at one of the first meetings you had. And so I invited her to come today. And she said, oh, I remember going to that first meeting and helping those people. So that was nice to be remembered.
Do you want to tell us how you got started doing genealogy too?
Well, Dorothy Adams and I started way back, and
In River Falls.
we went to the St. Croix Valley Genealogical Society because Polk County didn't have one at that time. And at that time, the St. Croix Valley served 5 counties:
I think so, yeah.
Polk, Burnett, Pierce,
Barron,
Barron, and St. Croix.
yeah.
Yeah. And actually, were you a president of that? Or
Vice, I can't remember.
vice president? Well, I was president of that a couple
And I
of
was
years.
vice.
And you were in charge of vice, okay. So that's how, and we met at that meeting on the campus of the university, out of River Falls, or campus of the University of Wisconsin at River Falls. And then, they don't have meetings in the summer, so then we'd only see each other from September till the next January, or the next May. And of course, both Dorothy and I were younger then. I know you find that hard to believe, but We both had children,
Yeah.
and we would go to Genealogy, and then we would stop and have a cup of coffee afterwards. I don't know that we ever went to the pub, but we did drink a lot of
We
coffee.
had drank a lot of coffee.
We drank a lot of coffee in those years, and discovered that we both enjoyed this hobby, and so,
Everything was handwritten too, we didn't
Yes.
have the computer
Yeah.
to
yeah.
do it,
yeah.
but,
We did a lot of research in the archives
yeah.
and in the libraries, and filled out a lot of family group sheets,
Oh, yeah.
and wrote a lot of letters, and waited anxiously for an answer to come back.
Well, with that, they had a speaker, a man that said, never stop writing letters.
Right.
So then I got thinking about it after I got home, and I said, never stop writing letters. And Russell's family all came from Vermont, Rutland County. So I'm gonna write out there to the statistics and see what I could get. Boy, was I lucky, I just hit gold. They told me there was a book published by the Tuttle Publishing Company, and it was published in 1900. So they sent me some pages out of that book, and they all matched up with what relatives had told us. So I called that company, they gave me the phone number, so I called them, and they said, oh, that book goes on the auction block tomorrow. I said, oh, no, don't, I want it.
Have you got that book?
I got it. And they said the hinge was broken.
Yeah.
I didn't care. It was the old original book. Cost me $85 to get it.
Plus postage.
I might find that Nichols bunch in there.
And then I ordered it and got it, and oh, for the information, right up to his dad is in that book as a child.
Yeah, that's not that one, yeah.
And it's called the Descendants of Robert Adams and his descendants.
But does it include all the other families in it?
Yeah, all the
Yeah.
other families. And then it
That's interesting.
has, when was it published? 1900. It was published, and it starts out at 1632, but the first Robert Adams that came here to the United States was now I forgot the date, 16 something.
Well,
Well-
the Pilgrims came in 1620, so.
Yeah.
They were Massachusetts Bay Colony, and they were about 10 years later, I think.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
yeah, that next 10 years, there were.
Yeah, there were about 10 years, a
there
whole
were
bunch of people
Lots of
came
them
in.
coming.
The
Yeah, in
Adams of it, yeah.
1630, the Puritans were coming.
Yeah, that was, I bet they were Puritan.
It could be.
The purified church.
So anyway, it was very interesting. I was very happy to get that book.
Neat.
So that was quite an experience.
When Dorothy and I both discovered that we had relatives coming from Eureka Township, well, we could hardly believe that here these two people, at that time you were living in Minnesota.
Yeah, Center City.
Yeah, and of course I was living in Hudson, I was living in Holton. I was living in the country at that point. And to find out that, you meet somebody and then you find out that you've got relatives that come from a little square.
Went to school with her brother.
Yeah,
In St. Croix.
yeah. So it's been an interesting journey.
Yes, it has.
So you still didn't tell us what got you. You told us how you were working, but what actually got you the spark to think you should do some family history?
Well, I've always been interested in history, and my father died really young, and I wanted to know who his people were. And my aunts all thought they were holier than thou, so I was sure we all came from saints, I guess. And so I wanted to find out, and they told some stories that even at 20, I knew could not be true. So I started to research, and sometimes I would work for a year really hard, and then you start having a baby, and then you raise the kids, and then I went to school, and then I would go on a trip, and then one year we went to Denmark, and that was really fun to be able to go back where my people had come from. And then eventually I decided to put it all together in a book. And so in 1986, I compiled a book of all of my husband's people, actually. And then I did a second one of his people. And then finally I got around to picking up my dad's stuff again. And I did a book on his family. And met some cousins through the internet, other cousins who knew these cousins. And then eventually I did one on my mother's side too. So history has just been a passion. And that's how it started. I don't remember the very first family group sheet I wrote.
We copied them all by hand.
Oh,
Yeah, I used to
Yes.
write them out, we'd draw out little squares and then
Yeah.
put them together in lines.
and actually, one of the most wonderful things about calling this home has been that Russ has been so willing to help those of us who haven't a clue how to do this, create space and create a book. And now he's helped me do 2 or 3.
Well, we're close to the reprint of your 80s,
6, the very
book,
first
yeah.
one. Yeah.
and then we had done 1 or 2, I don't remember,
I think we've done 3,
maybe,
and we're on the 4th one now.
yeah.
Has
And-
anybody made a website for this place?
Oh, Marie Laughlin, one of the founders of the
Do we have a
place,
website?
started a website many years ago for the group, and that's still there. And then we made a new website a few years ago when we got a grant. So we have 2 websites out there, the older one and the newer one. I'm going to switch over here, and Dottie didn't tell us why she started doing this. What was her interest, why she started researching her family?
My kids actually got me started. They'd come home from school and said, we got this history project going that wants to know, or we should fill in where our grandparents came from, where they lived, what kind of jobs they did, things like that. So I just got interested from helping the kids and asking my relatives, aunts and uncles, brothers and sisters of my parents, and just added that to what I did have and wrote it all down on paper in a notebook and transferred it over to the family record sheets when I got into genealogy deeper. And that's how I got started, was helping the kids.
And how long ago would you say that is? How many years ago do you think that would have been?
Oh, it's over 30.
Yeah.
Oh,
And
way
so
over 30, Dorothy.
I say it's 40 to 50.
so and when did you join this group? About, do you remember, was it quite early on, or?
I joined it with Helen down in River Falls.
But this
I don't remember the year.
You joined this group
Oh,
pretty
this,
soon after it started.
yep, right after it started.
Because when...
You were in Balsam Lake having your meeting,
Right.
and I seen it in the newspaper advertised for the meeting and decided, I'm gonna go back to it. Been with it ever since.
When you contacted Kathy Dice, and Kathy, I remember after Kathy had been to your meeting, I saw her at a meeting, and she said, Polk County's got a genealogy society now of their own. You know, you ought to go and find out what they're doing, because they need people. They don't have so very many. And you joined right after that, so it was real close to the beginning.
Yep. So I don't remember what year anymore.
I don't either.
So, Dottie, you got to brag about what you're just about 2 or 3 weeks away, and you'll have your
The
latest
Adams
book.
book addition to the book I've got, I've added to that.
She's got a 400-page addition to this book that was written in 1900.
Yeah.
And she sat there and fed each page through her scanner, and has well, we had a proof copy, and we're working on the final one. And we have to get it out by the end of May, early or late May, right?
Yep, because we have a family reunion.
Yeah.
29th of May.
So we're cutting closer to the wire here, Dottie.
Well, we don't have one, so don't work on mine, work on hers.
Well, hers is just about. We thought it was all ready, and there was something like 2 or 3 pages we had to shuffle. Then she brought 40 or 50 more pages.
I added his mother's side. On the cover, I got his picture of his dad and a picture of his mother. Well, all was his dad. So then I decided, I've got these pages on his mother's side, so I'm going to put them in there too.
Oh,
so I
good.
just put in the Russell edition in the
good.
back of the book.
Oh, good.
So there's 2 families really, the Adams family and the Russell family in that book.
When you get it, bring it so we get to see it.
Oh, I will.
I've seen the old one. I remember how excited you were when you got that old
Oh,
one.
yeah. So, now that old one is so old, the pages, you gotta handle them with
That's
care
that
because they're
Vermont,
breaking.
Vermont book you got?
Yeah, they're falling
Yeah,
apart.
that would be interesting.
There's this company, Google, that does everything. They have scanned that old book, and so if you go into the internet and search on, I forget what the name of the book is, Robert Adams,
Robert Adams and his descendants.
you can find the whole book scanned in, and you can read the whole book on the internet.
That's
So
the one that you got?
yeah, so it's pretty
That other
nice.
book you got hasn't been scanned though.
The one she's doing her own, yeah.
No, but that one from, the old one from
Yep,
Vermont.
that's-
Oh no, that's the one that's
That's
on
the
the
one
internet,
that-
yeah.
That's called Robert Adams?
Yes.
And
And his
What does
descendants.
that do? What does Google scanning it do to the price of that old book?
well,
Nothing.
some people want a copy of it, but there's such a limited number of copies, you rarely can find one. And so this says, if you really just want the information, you can go find that. And it's even better on the internet because Google makes the whole thing searchable, so you can search for any Adam's name or
There's
date.
something about holding that.
Yeah, I know, that's breathing that musty
Oh,
old
that
air.
Tell me about it.
Yeah, well, I've bought my type of books for $80 too, just because they're
One of your kids.
interesting. But
No, they don't.
Yeah, my kids aren't either. It's a certain kind of bird like us. That
Yep.
Most people don't.
I keep hoping when they get old enough. Are your kids interested? No, see.
Well, I
Are
gotta-
yours, Eloise?
We don't have any, thank
Oh,
goodness.
okay.
And my great granddaughter that's getting married now, the 25th of June, I think it's the 25th, she's interested.
Oh, good.
So our son gave his family book on the Peterson side to her because he didn't know what to do with it after his wife passed away. And because he said, I'm just not interested. Well, then Stephanie spoke up and said, Grandpa, don't throw it away, I want it.
Oh, good.
So he gave it to her, and she seems to be interested. But I do have a granddaughter-in-law that's Mormon. She's glad I did it all, because the Mormons are supposed to do it, she said, but she's not with it to do it. So she's glad that I did it and handed it over to her. Now she doesn't have to, but she don't want to carry on where I left off.
But when you put the book out, and it's forever, well, it'll be for sale on Amazon and stuff, and I mean, it's something that you've done that nobody else could have done probably or would have done.
Yeah.
And it's like when you're searching for family history and you find this one article or story that somebody wrote of some relative 100 years ago, and you say, man, what a treasure that is. Even though nobody cared about it for 100 years, maybe until you came along, it still is it's quite amazing. So, yeah.
Is there a logical step or maybe illogical step to go from Ancestry.com, everything I've got stored there, to a book?
Mm-hmm. There's Ancestry will do that for you at a fee. You can have it printed. I mean, you can try it and see what you think of it, and or you can. I haven't tried it, but they have as these features that they'll turn your stuff into a book or things like that. So
They might have a proof copy that would be not quite as expensive as a...
yeah. Well, I'm not quite sure how. A lot of us just print out what we get. Like Dottie just printed out the sheets that she wanted information and put them in her books. But Ancestry and those like to try to do things like sell you a huge wall-sized family tree, you know, and stuff like that. And so I just haven't done it because I sort of, if you're trying to make a lot of books, it's expensive. If you're trying to make one or two, it's probably worth it to do it. But I just haven't looked at it. But I will look at it and see if we can see if there is that feature. I think they were trying to do it. Ancestry keeps getting taken over.
Thing onto these. That's all
Yeah.
I use. I got
Yeah.
pictures, everything.
But you know, the problem is if you download them onto floppy diskettes, well, they're obsolete in 5-10 years.
Those are, but these
Yeah, well, everything gets obsolete.
Well, what I did, see, I went from floppy disks to hard disks,
Yeah.
to these, and you just keep moving along.
Yeah.
It's all digital. Once it's digitalized,
Yeah,
you move up
and
the,
that's one of the things
yeah,
about putting it in a book form.
well, it's printed.
You can still find
Yeah.
like 100-year-old book on the Addams Family.
Yeah.
It might be a little
Yeah.
bit worn, but it stayed
Until
around.
somebody throws it away,
Yeah,
or
so
worn
that's-
out. I've got stacks of that stuff in my family, but you know, then they transfer that. But once you know, I can hand this to all.
Yeah.
You
uh-huh.
know, and
Yeah.
it's on that darn cloud. Somebody owns
Yeah.
that cloud. I'm a little afraid of that.
Well, one of the nice things about
These you own.
computer genealogy is it took a lot of people who probably wouldn't have bothered with a computer and
Yeah.
kind of drug them into this modern age of computing because you could do stuff. We didn't have to drive to River Falls to look on a microfilm for a
Right.
census. We could do it locally and that. So that's, but you know, you can really tell if you're a hardcore genealogy person, which I was back in the 90s and early 2000 when I was really into it, because you plan your vacations around some cemetery or some relative or some church or some place you're going to. Yeah.
Eloise, you've been with the club for a while, and I can't remember.
I started with the River Falls Genealogy Group because that Polk County was in that, and that's where his great-grandma was from, was Polk
Yeah,
County.
and so Floyd and I are kind of related. And did we find that out after you belonged to this club, or?
I think,
How did
yeah,
that come about?
it was after, well, especially once the Lindstroms came down, and we were digging around at that point. But I think you had told me that when I was at that cemetery at the church. And you said your relatives were there, and I said, well, Floyd's are right here, so.
Did you ever use PAF, that one from the Mormons? That
You did.
PAF, they call it?
You use PAF.
Software?
Maybe, no, not the software.
You know,
Is it
I've been using
PAF?
that because what happened was, when they quit that, it's all free. Now, if, you know, you can still use it, they aren't supporting it, but, you know, I can take it right up here. If you want a copy of the whole program, you can take it right off there and continue on, start new with it and everything else.
Richard has that,
It's all,
this man here.
but they
has-
won't, see, they quit supporting it because they want to go on the cloud and get the information because they want to baptize people.
Sure.
You know, it's kind of controversial. I'm not going to get into that issue, but I had some relatives come by that became Mormons apparently, saying they wanted the information on my family. I didn't know if they were up to it at the time. I suspected it. So they came and visited my house, and I gave them just a DVD because they're a nickel. And I said, here's all the stuff I have. I said, but you know, it's kind of controversial. They stopped supporting PAF, and I said people were complaining that they were getting baptized and they didn't want to get baptized. And they said, well, and I said, well, do you realize I'm a Mormon? And I said, I didn't really care. I said, well, yeah, whatever. So when they left, you know, they asked me, well, is it okay if we baptize these people? I said, you know, it means absolutely nothing to me with my beliefs. But if you want to, you're welcome to do it. You
And the
know?
dogs and cats.
Yeah.
It was very important to them to get they had to have the name apparently. And then they were
That's what is part of their faith.
Great grandfather or somebody who, you know. But that program is an excellent program. And you can just move, you know. Then when I went and bought a program from Ancestry, they cost me $30 for one program on one computer for that Ancestry.com. And you can take I could take my PAF one, I mean, that's a better program, I'll give them credit for that, but I could take this PAF one and zip, it all went right on without a JEDCOM file or anything, it automatically will go right on to Ancestry.com off my PAF one.
So I've been using Family Tree Maker
That's Ancestry.com.
and Ancestry.com.
Yeah.
Now, and I think I'm breaking away from Ancestry.com. I won't know for sure until they stop taking money from
Well,
my
it's getting
bank.
so expensive.
Yeah. So, but can I go from Family Tree Maker to PAF?
Probably, you can, what they call it, have you ever made a JEDCOM file?
Yeah.
I think you might have to make a JEDCOM, I don't think you can go back to PAF from Ancestry.com, because they're more sophisticated.
Yeah.
You can go up from PAF to, and I know that because I've done it.
Uh-huh.
I bought one program for $30 on one computer, and I've done it, but now I can't, I can't give you a program on Ancestry, I have to go to their cloud, you can communicate that way, I've noticed. But with this little puppy, you at the end, you could start with their, one ancestor and then it'll fan out, like they do. And it's a little clunky, but it works good once you get the hang of it. And then you can hand it to anybody. I got my whole family tree, hundreds of pictures, probably 10,000 names, and hundreds of pictures, all on this thing. I go to click on PAF, RSL for my, and up it comes, and it all traces out. It's indexed by name, and then it goes through different, it'll print out various printouts if you want it, or you can do it on the computer screen, just like Ancestry.com. But see, they quit supporting this about 5 years ago.
That's the problem with computer type stuff is you're only as good as the company that's backing it. And so like Ancestry.com, if they ever decided to quit, you might
Yeah, this is
lose
good
that.
through Windows 10. I know it'll run on
Yeah,
your computer. I
but
checked it.
but the problem is
Yeah.
20 years from now somebody will say, okay, I'm going to open up that, and if the program itself probably won't run on a computer, so it's very
Right, but what you got to do, see what I did now, when you could first scan pictures, they had a tag, it was called TIF format for all your pictures. Well, I converted them to JPEG now, because you can still use the TIF format, but it takes up so much disk space. But you can get conversion programs. I've been updating since I had a TRS-80 computer back when they first came out. You saved everything on a.
I'm going to say that that's why putting it out as a book every once in a while is a good idea, because that sort of freezes it in a certain time, and that's out.
Just like I'm doing. You keep updating it, but the problem with books, I've got stacks of stuff. But then you got to transfer it to somebody.
Yeah, but when you do a book, you also start thinking about concentrating it down to what's really important and what isn't. And then people sort of hesitate to throw away a book that has some family history in it. When I was cleaning out after my mom and dad passed away at the farmhouse, in the upstairs, I was looking through the old books, and there was a bunch of old books of my great uncles and stuff, and one of them was all in Norwegian. And I looked at it, and I thought, well, it's another one of those religious books that my family was quite religious, and they were quite sure they'd go to hell if they threw away a Bible or any religious book, so they just got stacked. So I looked at it a while, and my great aunt had actually made a couple of notes in the thing, and it was in Norwegian, and she had corrected a couple of errors, and then I read the names, and it was my family's name. So it was a book on family history.
My first experiences with computers
I read on it every day.
was in Alaska when I belonged to that Genie group up there. One of the fellows had one of the very first computer programs for genealogy on a big floppy, and that was really something. So he said, here, I'll make a copy of this program and you can have. So he made a copy of his original disk, and so I used that and loaded up my family tree. I suppose I had several hundred names in at that point, where it was, getting to where I really wanted to protect it, so I was worried about that program disc that I had, so I figured, well, I'd better make a copy of this disc that was a copy of the original disc, and then use that copy of a copy. And so I made a copy of that disc, and then I started using it, and the next thing I knew, all my data was gone. And so
What had happened?
he had given me a Xerox copy of the manual that went with it, and I looked through that, and at the back end, what happens if your program does this, and it said something, if you suddenly lose your data, you may call this number and be prepared to discuss the possible penalties for copyright infringement.
Oh, yeah, that would keep you going on the hook, wouldn't it?
From then on, I figured, well, I'm just using original programs.
Yeah, but you had to do that all over again.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, I found that, but nowadays, it's so easy. See, I've got one in my safety deposit box, I've got 4 other flash drives that have this identical one. Now, if I progress on and lose some stuff, you go back to the original one, and at least you don't, so that if the thing falls apart on you, you can always get back to your key one that you never mess with. See, this one, if somebody takes this and starts screwing around, the pictures they will go into the wrong file if you alter them. And so if you get too far away and things are starting, you just go back to this original one, you don't have to add much data. You only lose what you added and screwed up on. But if you get back to the original one, and always keep a solid original one that you mark as your main copy, and all you need it on these puppies, you can put your whole computer on these things nowadays. They're so nice.
So now you get a totally waterproof gold-covered case, and you put it in your pocket and put it 6 feet under. 6 feet under with you in the box.
Yeah, they dig me up, we'll have our genealogy.
When you have a book done and you print copies, you print enough so that each one of your children get one for Christmas, and they open up
I
and
did
go,
that.
Yeah.
The Petersons.
oh, boy. We could have come to your house and read this, Mom. We didn't need it for a present. Too bad, you got it anyway.
Well, they're warning everyone now that all the stuff that like we have accumulated in our lives, our kids are not interested in any of it.
It's what?
Your heirs aren't interested in any of it.
Oh, mine are interested in some of it.
Oh, yeah, if I know.
Not very much of it.
I got 2 boys and I don't care.
They want my dishes
I have
and
3
my
daughters,
books.
but they don't want my dishes and my
Her
son.
grandmother says,
There's a few pieces that might mean something to them, but the things that I've been hearing, I have my grandmother's treadle sewing machine. Nobody wants it.
A historical society might be interested.
Yeah, but nobody in the family cares.
Well, it jumps, I think, generations, because one of my great aunts was quite interested, and nobody was until I wasn't interested until my father was, he had got Parkinson's disease, and he couldn't do much anymore in his 80s, and so he used to sit and talk to me, and he kept saying somebody should do some family history. And so to please him, I started doing it, and it gets addictive after a while. Yeah.
Copy of PAF. It's in one folder. There's one folder on here.
You spend a lot of time in cemeteries.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then you take the grandchildren with you.
Yes,
Yeah.
you do.
And you
You
tell
take your
stories
kids
about
and then you take your
You
grandkids.
tell stories about the people that are
That's
buried
right.
here.
You do.
It's kind of handy.
Yeah.
It's a little clunky and there's some issues with it.
I
but,
should say.
It works good. And it's free.
Yeah.
That's what I like about it.
And every Memorial Day, you
It's so easy.
make the journey around and the kids go, oh, Mom, we gotta go again. Weren't we just there? Yeah, a whole year ago.
Because I I even read
Last
somewhere
time
where someone
disappointed.
said,
But I keep thinking someday they'll remember and it will be important.
My father took me,
millennials are not what
we used to go down to Wisconsin Rapids rather regularly. We took the same road because this was where he had hunted and trapped in the bar that they went to. And every year we went down. He told me to see. Now I can go down there by